Hi everyone, in this video we're going to be taking a look at Inspector Calls, specifically with the character of Mr. Birling. We're going to have a look at some key quotations and how to respond to an exam question. So this is for anyone that is studying English literature for AQA and want to get a little bit of extra time just preparing for the exam. If you haven't done so already, please can you like and subscribe, it really does help us out when you do so. So the first thing I'd like you to do is look at the following statements and identify which ones are true and which ones are false about Mr. Birling. So firstly we have then, Mr. Birling believes the younger generation have it far easier. Secondly, we have Mr. Birling is the first character to speak in the play. Thirdly, Mr. Birling believes we are all responsible for each other. Mr. Birling has more wealth or prosperity than Mr. Croft. And Mr. Birling was an alderman and Lord Mayor. So if you want to pause the video here and go through it at your own time, please feel free to do so. I'm going to jump ahead and look at the answers. Class feedback. Check your answers against the ones below. So you can see here we've got two different sides. We've got our true statements on the left hand side and the false statements on the right. So our true statements are Mr. Birling is the first character to speak in the play. Next we have Mr. Birling believes the younger generation has it easier. And thirdly, Mr. Birling was an alderman and the Lord Mayor. This is an important detail as well because it means that he's going to have a certain amount of power, more so than just his role as an important person within society. Mr. Birling believes we're all responsible for each other, which is false. He believes that everyone's responsible for themselves and just their family. And then Mr. Birling has more wealth and prosperity than Mr. Croft. It's not true. He's actually someone who is slightly inferior to the Croft family, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more, especially when we do our lesson going through some details about Gerald. So by the end of the lesson you'll be able to recall some of the key details about Mr. Birling, understand some of the key quotations for this character, and finally apply your understanding to write an exam response. So it's really important that you keep coming back, keep revising those quotations, because when you get into the exam you won't have an extract in front of you, you won't be able to have lots of quotations there. So it's really important that you try and commit some of these quotations to memory and think about how they apply to the exam as well. Look at the exam question and attempt the challenges that follow. How does Priestley present Mr. Birling in Inspector Calls? Write about how Mr. Birling is presented in this extract, how Priestley uses Mr. Birling to get his ideas across in the rest of the play. So what I'd like you to do then is think about, if you had this in the exam, how confident would you feel about this question if you went into it right away? Next, I'd like you to try and recall as many quotations as you can about this character. And then finally, I want you to look through the extracts on the next slide to help plan for the questions. Obviously you wouldn't actually get an extract in the exam, it's just something we're doing to help revise and to get ready for the proper assessment. Look at the extract and attempt the challenges that follow. So it says, Mr. Birling says, solemnly, but this is the point. I don't want to lecture you two young fellows again, but what so many of you don't seem to understand now, when things are so much easier, is that a man has to make his own way, has to look after himself, and his family too, of course, when he has one, and so long as he does that, he won't come to much harm. But the way some of these cranks talking right now, you'd think everybody has to look after everybody else, as if we were all mixed up together like bees in a hive, community and all that nonsense. But take my word for it, you youngsters, and you've learnt in the good hard school of experience, that a man has to mind his own business and look after himself and his own. So what I'd like you to do now is have a look through the challenges. So the first one, identify any key quotations linked to Mr. Birling. Next, can you think about any key words or language devices that is used in the extract, and then the mega challenge, check your understanding against the annotations on the next slide. So if you'd like to pause the video here, please feel free to do so. We're now going to go ahead and look at the annotations in the next part. Class feedback. Check your understanding against the annotated extracts and discuss and compare some of the key points. So here we have our extracts on the left hand side, and here are just some of the key things that would be important to talk about. So here are our key points. So the first one, thinking about stage directions. So the word solemn connotes a serious tone, which implies Mr. Birling believes his words hold a sense of importance. So when he is actually delivering these lines, it's important that the actor should think about how they're actually delivering the lines as well. Some of the key quotations would include, "Man has to make his own way. He has to look after himself." This is going to be a key quotation because it refers back to the main theme of responsibility. "All mixed up together like bees in a hive." So here we've got a really nice simile, and it also helps to illustrate Mr. Birling's overall view on society and this idea that if we do look out for each other, that generally it's going to seem quite chaotic. Next we have the good hard school of experience. He's implying there that the older generation have more experience and therefore are more knowledgeable and have wisdom to impart on the younger generation who are less experienced and more likely to make mistakes in life. Okay, what we're going to do now then is we're going to look at a series of key quotations. The only thing there's going to be is that there are going to be a few key words missing out of them, so I'd like you to try and work out the missing words or phrases, and if you can, try and think where might these actually occur within the play itself. So the first one then, "It is one of the blank nights of my life." Your blank to Sheila means a blank lot to me. So again, if you want to pause this and go through it at your own time, please feel free to do so. We will race ahead and go through towards the next quotation as well. The next one then. "You'll hear some people say that war is blank, and to that I say blank." So remember to stretch and challenge yourself and think, what part of the play might this quotation come from? If you're not too sure, don't worry about it too much. We will be going through the answers at the end. So for the next one then, "I speak as a blank-headed blank man." So try and think, what is the missing words and what part of the play might this quotation come from? Next one. "I gather there's a very good blank of a blank." Next one. "The blank she sails next week, and unsinkable blank unsinkable." Class feedback. Check your answers against the four quotations. So for number one then we have, "It's one of the happiest nights of my life. Your engagement to Sheila means a tremendous lot to me." Now on the surface this doesn't seem that it's massively important, but if you actually think about the deeper meaning behind this quotation, he's not actually happy because his daughter's getting married in a typical sense that a father would be happy for their daughter. In fact, he's probably more happy that Sheila is going to help benefit the family line by getting married to the Croft family, which is going to make him seem more important and more valuable within society. Number two, "You'll hear some people say that war is inevitable, and to that I say fiddlesticks." Now with this one we have a really good example of dramatic irony. Of course we know that they did actually go to war, and this is communicating to the audience that Mr. Birling does seem quite arrogant and really quite foolish at times in the play. Number three, I speak as a hard-headed businessman. Number four, "I gather there's a very good chance of a knighthood." So this is talking about Mr. Birling's own personal prospects and the fact that he might actually be improving his social status within society as well. And then the final one, "The Titanic, she sails next week, and unsinkable, absolutely unsinkable." This is probably the biggest indication that we had of dramatic irony there, because of course the most famous ship and the most famous thing to ever sink really would be the Titanic. So I want you to look back at the exam question now and read the student response in preparation for some comprehension questions. So here's our question on the left hand side, and this is what one student has wrote. So they've said then, "The poet has used dramatic irony to show how arrogant the older generation is. You'll hear some people say the war is inevitable, and to that I say fiddlesticks." The audience would be aware of how foolish Mr. Birling is being presented, as at the time they would have known that we did in fact go to war. In addition, the adjective fiddlesticks implies how firmly Mr. Birling believes in his own opinion and how the older generation are stuck in their ways. So if you want to pause the video here and go through it at your own leisure, please feel free to do so. We're now going to have a go at a few comprehension questions just to help assess the quality of this response. So answer the questions to assess your understanding. So number one, has the student used the term playwright? Obviously it's important that when you are writing about things like an inspector calls, you're using the right terminology, and that goes for the other things you might be studying on your course as well. Number 2, has the learner identified an appropriate language technique? Number 3, has the student used an appropriate quotation? Number 4, have they linked back to the focus of the exam question? This is a very important one when you're writing your response. A lot of the time people forget to link back to the question, and then they start kind of going on a mad tangent about something that's slightly unrelated. And number 5, has the learner made links to the context of the play? And again, we know that's going to be an important part within your assessment. And number 6, has the learner linked back to the exam question? So once you've had a go at these questions, like to try and stretch and challenge yourself, you can rewrite the student response, try and make improvements based on what we've learned from those comprehension questions. So in the next lesson, we're going to go over the following things. So we're going to recall some key details about Mrs. Birling. We're going to understand some of the key quotations for her character, and then you're going to apply your understanding to write an exam response based on that character question as well. Okay. Now, if you need any additional support or help, the new videos will be added every single week. Alternatively, leave us a comment below or visit our partner channel, Bookworm Teaching, for more lessons and guidance on all things English. Thanks ever so much for listening, guys, and all the best with your work and your revision in the future. Bye bye.